welcome to Pinup Pumpkins Horror Podcast. It has been a little bit, but we are back and ready like never before, and we're going to talk about Hereditary today. Dun, dun,
Dun,
dun.
dun, dun.
Yes.
Cult favorite, I think.
hmm
Modern cult favorite. So
I feel like it definitely is. Yeah.
yeah. So Hereditary came out in 2018, so 4 years ago, and was directed by Ari Aster and produced by A24. Everyone loves A24, at least I do.
I feel like most of the videos that we've covered so far have been A24.
Yeah, because they're just putting them out like
Actually,
crazy. They just
they
keep
are.
on going. They had a budget of $10 million and made about $80 million at the box office. So, yeah, return on
70 million in
investment.
profit. Nice.
Can't argue with that. So, let's see. The film stars Toni Collette, Alex Wolff of the Naked Brothers band, if anybody remembers that, Gabriel Burn, and introduced Millie Shapiro at film debut, I'm pretty sure. They did some theater before this.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, in general summary, just a real quick little short tidbit here. So we have when the grandmother of a family passes away, Annie, played by Toni Collette, is forced to deal with grief while uncovering terrifying and horrible secrets about her family. And let's just say her mother's passing is just the beginning.
You can say that again.
Yeah, truly.
So yes, there are some spoilers and trigger warnings. So Hereditary is a very heavy movie emotionally. There's topics, especially family trauma, death, and yeah.
Yeah, especially the feeling is very heavy, the topics are very heavy, and then the visuals are, for me, when I saw this, it was things that I had not really seen portrayed in such a intense way
Mm-hmm.
that felt
Mm-hmm.
like real life as this
Yes,
movie.
yes. Okay, so I think we can kind of get into our initial thoughts, but there will be spoilers, I'm guessing.
Oh,
Should we just
probably. Yeah,
should
I
we just
mean,
go for it?
let's just do a blanket statement of spoilers. If you haven't seen this, first of all, what are you doing? Go do it. um, but yeah, if you want to hang out, gotta watch the movie.
hmm 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 Okay, so I didn't watch this movie until this year. Actually, like I feel like a month ago now. Um, during spooky season, which is the best time to watch it.
Of
But
course.
it had been so hyped up as like this is the scariest movie people have ever seen, and like everyone I asked if they would watch it again, they were like absolutely not. And so I had those kind of preconceived notions of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrifying. This is going to be the scariest movie I see. So I was like really nervous and scared to watch it. But I think like because I mentally prepped myself for it to be like the worst ever instead of just being like, oh yeah, just like, go watch them, see what happens. Like, um, I love this movie. It's really good, visually stunning. Acting is incredible. Like that's an understatement. Like it's so good. You can feel every emotion. Uh, but in terms of like, so it wasn't like as scary as I thought it was gonna be in the sense of like, there's not body horror in the sense of like a slasher film, but there's like the horror that is like super intense. That
Yeah.
like it was more disturbing, I think, than than scary.
Yeah.
Although after I watched it, I found myself thinking about it a lot more than I would other movies, and then I'm like, okay, I'm still thinking about this. Like I appreciate it more. And we can also talk about the things that were scariest to each of us,
Yeah.
because I feel like they might be different.
hmm Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I saw this movie in 2018 in theaters when it came out, probably pretty close to when it first came out. So, I don't really remember because this was a long time ago. But I'm pretty sure like I just remembered hearing that it was very good and that I had to see it and I was like, okay. So I went into it not really knowing anything, which is how I like to go into horror movies.
Hmm.
Um but when I first saw it, I remember being like really surprised, like I said, by how much they showed and the way that they showed it. But I don't. I think I found it more creepy and disturbing
Hmm.
than scary. Um, and especially like towards the end of the movie was just like um, one of those things where you're just kind of like jaw dropped, seeing what's happening in front of you.
Yes.
And rewatching it this time, I had like forgotten about some of the things that happened, especially in the middle of the movie. But I think like watching it a second time, I admire it more as a film. So
Hmm.
I had a really great time breaking it down, which I have so much to say. So we'll get to that.
Yes, I'm very excited to hear all of like the things that you found watching it a second time.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it a second time. I think I will. And I want to because I feel like watching it a second time, I'm going to pick up a lot more stuff now that I know what's going to happen at the end.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's yeah, that ending is
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. Let's
Yep.
see.
Yeah, so the movie is definitely a slow burn kind of movie.
Hmm.
I personally really like slow burn horror. Um, as long as it's done well, because if it's not, it's just agonizing.
Yeah.
Like, why am I watching this? Um, but because the drama aspect of the movie is so good, the the descent into darkness is really nice because really if you break it up, like there's like an hour of the movie where you're just kind of vibing, you're getting to know people, and then like really traumatic incident, and then it kind of is like, and then the last 15 minutes is just wild,
Yeah.
where it all tries to kind of tie it together. But like Ari Aster has a really good way of building suspense in like a traditional way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you were talking about in our secret little saucy little notes page. You were talking about um comparing it to Midsummer,
Yes. Yep. So
which I mean obviously because the director is the same, but
yeah, yeah. I don't want to be that person to be like, oh, I'm gonna compare it, but I am gonna compare it.
yeah.
So yes, they were made by the same person, and Midsummer was done after Hereditary. I like Hereditary more. I feel like it's original of a story. Uh, in terms of folk horror, so I don't know if it's just me, but like the folk horror that I have seen, I don't really know how I feel about it. Like I don't super duper love it. Um, I feel like I would if it's done well. Like I
Hmm.
really liked The Wicker Man, and I think that's considered folk horror. And I haven't seen things like Salem's Lot, which I need to, and like other folk horror. But like I also don't like The Witch, which is folk
Oh,
horror.
I love The
Which
Witch.
I know everybody loves The Witch, and I'm like, I don't know. And then Men
Oh,
is
I
also
didn't like that movie very
yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. It has that folk horror element
Hmm.
that felt kind of like out of nowhere.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think Hereditary is like it for a folk horror, and I'm not really a good judge of this because I have a hard opinion of folk horror, but I think Midsummer got the folk down a little bit better, in
Hmm.
my opinion. Whereas like yes, there's elements of Paimon, who is the god of mischief, but like the story I feel holds up on its own, kind of with, well,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like it's a big part of it, right?
Right.
On one hand, on the other hand, it's like I feel like it could stand on its own and like insert whatever kind of position, like
Yeah.
deity in there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, this is very
yeah,
specific.
yeah.
And I think on that, I think that Midsummer kind of does like a different job of incorporating
Mm-hmm.
the folk horror than Hereditary, which is what you were saying. Like
Mm-hmm.
Midsummer is very clear and very like almost kind of like knock you over the head about its intentions, and I think
Yeah.
Hereditary is a little bit more like um hung back a bit about
Mm-hmm.
it, where like
Mm-hmm.
the first time I watched it I was just kind of like, okay, like I really don't understand what was happening, but
Yeah.
not like I don't understand what happened, but like I didn't
No, I felt the
like,
same way.
you
I was
know,
like,
like I didn't
what just
really get
happened?
it.
I really don't get it.
Yeah, but then seeing like the second time and knowing what's about to happen and like looking for stuff because I was specifically looking for stuff because that's what I do.
Yeah.
I saw so much more that was like in there that like I think on a first watching you don't necessarily notice as like, oh, this is like something that I'm going to see later, but you take it in and it kind of like preps you and primes you for what you're about to experience. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty cool. And I think that Hereditary benefits much more from a second watching than Midsummer ever will.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I
Like
feel like
I don't feel like I need to watch Midsummer again.
I don't either. I really don't. Like some like the visuals, some of the scenes are very visually stunning and stuck in my head.
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't rewatch it like I would. You
Yeah.
know?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I agree. And there were definitely things I picked up on the first time watching, like the little symbols
Yeah.
near the car accident and then walls and stuff, but I didn't know what they meant. I'm like, okay, these are these symbols, but
Yeah,
like,
cool.
what? What do they mean? What is this? Um, and then we get like that really, really small second of her opening the page and talking about Haman.
Mhm.
But I think what both Midsummer and Hereditary have is cults, and
Oh yeah.
uh, there's definitely some commentary on cults
Yeah.
for sure.
I would say so.
Yep, yep. So,
Let's see. I don't know. So I guess the beginning, we can just talk about that. I guess we start out with the grandmother of this family and the mother of the main, I would say she's the main character, um,
mhm,
has died in some way. She just says
mhm,
it's because she's old, and that's kind of all we get from it. They're at a funeral. It's really awkward. She's talking about how her mom was very distant and had secret rituals, which
mhm.
yeah. Um, and then, you know, the kids are attending, but it seems like they don't really have the best relationship with the grandmother, except for the youngest child, Charlie, who seems that
Yeah.
she has a pretty good relationship with her, whereas the rest of the family is either indifferent or just does not
Mhm.
have good feelings towards her at all. Um, and, we're kind of just watching this family deal with that grief for a little while, and the daughter is dealing with it. She's not really sad, but she's kind of just, it seems like she's kind of just confused about
Mm.
how she's supposed to feel. At least that's what I got
Yeah,
from it.
yeah,
um
definitely.
yeah, and she's going to support groups and talking about how she's lost her father, she's lost her brother, she's lost her
Mhm,
mother, and
mhm.
a
Yeah,
whole long monologue about all of that.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And so this just kind of reminds me of like the juxtaposition of like this funeral that's happening and then the funeral that later happens.
Hmm.
And honestly, they happen, I think, I'm not exactly sure of the timeline, but I feel like very close to each other. And I'm like, this poor woman, this poor family. Like
Yeah.
the first time, and you even get the husband, the father's name. I forget what his name is.
Steve?
Steve. Yes. Come into Peter's room and is like, "How you feel?" And he's like, "Meh."
Yeah.
Eh.
And they're
You know what I
like,
mean?
yeah, we get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, uh, but then the second time when it was like someone closer to them and someone in their immediate family, and there was like a lot of trauma associated with it because, for a grandmother, if they're older, it's kind of like expected that they would
Yeah.
like die before someone young would. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of how we as humans, I think it should be, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not always what happens. And so you juxtapose that to like a death that is super traumatic and like very close to the family, and it like tears them apart. And Annie has gone through so much death in her life.
Mm-hmm.
This is just like it implodes on itself.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I guess we can just go straight to that.
Yeah.
We've got the teenage son. I would say he's probably like a junior or senior in high school. He wants to
Mhm.
go to this party, and their mom makes him take his sister. She doesn't really want to go, and he's basically just there to like hang out with this girl and smoke weed and have a
Yeah.
good time. And we've got this 13-year-old sister just kind of tagging along, doesn't want to be there whatsoever. um and he kind of leaves her alone in this high school party.
Mm-hmm.
And she finds herself like eating a cake, and we know from previous scenes that she is
Mm-hmm.
allergic to nuts. And this cake is just literally full of walnuts. Like,
Yeah.
I think like 90% of the ingredients list is walnuts, maybe. um but yeah, she has an allergic reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry if I'm not explaining this super well. I'm
Oh
just
no,
like,
you're
hey, this happens.
yeah.
um She has an allergic reaction, and Peter, the brother, is super mega duper high and has to drive her home or drive her to the hospital. Um, yeah, this is challenging. um, he's driving like really, really fast, and he sees a deer in the road, swerves to avoid the deer, and Charlie, who's having this allergic reaction, has her head out the window, and hits a telephone pole. Which I think brings the entire movie this exact second to like an abrupt halt. Like,
Yes.
there's so, like, the energy immediately is different, which of
Yes.
course.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think like I don't know about you, but I think we experience it with him not only because of the way that he reacts, but also like we were not expecting that in the movie
No.
at all, especially from where it was to where it went.
Yeah.
Um, in a sense where like, you know, Charlie is kind of acting a little strange, doing some
Yeah.
creepy child stuff, cutting heads off of pigeons,
Yeah,
whatever, whatnot.
seeing ladies with fires in the woods and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my expectation in a horror movie, I guess, is like I thought like a creepy child would contribute throughout, and it's not that she doesn't contribute because like she is definitely a big part and the main character in ways because she is Payman.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Oh
but I
gosh.
didn't think she was gonna just like die
Me neither. And I think that was kind
like
of
that.
how you were supposed to feel, because I believe that the marketing and the trailers for when this movie came out made it seem like she was going to be like the creepy kid, and that was
Okay.
going to be like what the movie was.
Mm, mm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like even without seeing the trailer, like I
Mm-hmm.
felt that way. I'm like, okay, what is going on with her? But then it was like, bam, she's dead, and you're
Yeah.
like, what? I feel like, so Scream,
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that was one of the first movies that kind of subverted expectations in the sense where we thought Drew Barrymore was going to be the lead, and then
Oh,
she
yeah.
immediately and if you haven't seen Scream, then I don't know what you're doing. Anyways,
Yeah. What are you doing
but
here?
that's not even a spoiler. Um, but yeah, so it kind of, I feel like I could put it on that level. You
Definitely.
know?
It's definitely you're just like, "Oh shit."
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think Peter in that moment, he, slams the brakes. He knows already in his head what's happened, but he
Mm-hmm.
cannot process what happened, how he contributed to what happened, and
Mm-hmm.
or anything. So he just kind of he won't look because he knows what he's going to see when he looks, and he can't do it. He
Yeah.
goes home, he locks the car up, he can't look, he can't talk to anybody, and he goes to bed and just waits until the morning. Because what do you
Yep.
do? What do you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Exactly. And um, so it's Alex Wolff, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
actor?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So his performance, like, I don't even know if it's a performance. I feel like he portrays PTSD like so well, and of course everyone reacts differently to trauma, stuff like that. But like, so I technically do have like PTSD, and I've like reacted in a very similar way. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I knew exactly what he was feeling and thinking, and like just like the zone out, like I'm like I understand, and I'm so sorry. Like it was terrible because I felt so bad for him, because how do you come back from that, because you're gonna always feel like it's your fault
Right. And
if
it's not
you were driving.
only yeah, it's not only you feeling like it's your fault, it's everyone around you feeling like it's your fault, whether they want to say it or not.
Yeah.
You know that, like, deep down, that's what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just think like this movie does a really good portrayal of PTSD and trauma. And even when he's like at school and he's still like not really there, or like when he's with his friends
Mm-hmm.
and they're under the bleachers and he just breaks down, you know what I mean? Like you can't go back to the way that it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, there was a literal split in the movie from before that happens and after. Like it's a completely different feeling.
Mm-hmm. And the
Um,
characters are completely different in the way that they behave and speak to each other.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And Annie doesn't take it very well either.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she is an artist, and she works on miniatures and kind of recreates these scenes, I think, to help process that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some of them, she's trying to like zoom out and look at it in a, what is it, like
I
neutral view.
Yeah, I think she
But
says when she's making one of them and somebody comments on what she's doing, she's like, "This is an objective view of what happened." Like
mhm,
she just sees it as like this is what it is, and I'm just showing
mhm,
people what it is.
yeah, yep. And she's going to like therapy sec- uh, session, and first it was for the grandmother, her mother, and then
Hmm.
it was like, oh no, I'm here for my daughter now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, and we get a lot of character development and progression at those meetings.
Yeah, definitely. Those meetings and I think I think one of the most famous scenes from this movie is your very favorite, the dinner scenes.
Yeah,
Or the
it
dinner
is,
scene.
because it's so good. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, it is really good. Um, where were we at? Oh gosh, this movie is so much. I think I say that every
There's,
time because I just
there's,
don't even know where to like begin.
mhm.
Um,
Oh yeah, one thing I do want to say before we move on,
mhm,
going back to like the when Charlie's having an anaphylactic reaction.
mhm.
So I have a tree nut allergy, and I like have EpiPens and stuff. So like I've cheese feeling, and it's so uncomfortable. Like you don't have to understand to know that it's uncomfortable, but I'm just like that whole scene. I'm like, I know what's coming, but I don't want it to happen, and it was
Mhm.
just awful.
Oh
Like
my gosh. I'm just sure
the
it's like
worst
amped up so
possible.
much by like having had experiences like that.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it's terrible. So just a little note
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
So let's see. We kind of talked about how Annie, the mother, has had a lot of traumatic experiences throughout her life, and it's all kind of topped off by Charlie being, I don't know, she says being killed, and yes, but also no. Um, it's hard
By
to like
accident.
say because you can't really
But
say
it's
like
not even an
she,
accident, really.
yeah, true. She does say yes. So, oh God, this is where the problem is. I have so much to say. I don't know where to even go. Um, but yeah, so when we were talking about, she said her father had passed away, and she says her brother had a mental health issue. I don't remember what exactly
I
she had
think she
said.
said that he had schizophrenia.
Okay, and
Uh,
and had committed suicide because he
yeah.
felt that his mother was putting people inside him, which is
Yes.
something that she says that you kind of take for granted at first, but then as we
Yeah.
go on, we'll see where
You're like,
that's like makes a little bit more
literally.
sense. Yeah. Um, and so she has all this trauma and she sleepwalks.
Mhm.
And we find out that she has a difficult relationship with her children because one of these times that she was sleepwalking, she had covered herself and her children in paint thinner. And when she woke up, she was right about to set all of them on fire. And her son had woken up and saw this and has never really truly forgiven her for that.
Right.
Um, so they have a difficult relationship to begin with. Maybe not on the surface, but I think this kind of sets it off where he kind of has this feeling of like, well, I've never been what you wanted. I
Mhm.
I don't feel like you like me. And she, doesn't see that incident as, from the other side, she's like, it was not on purpose. Why can't he understand that? But
Mhm.
also now that this has happened where he is like, this wasn't on purpose, why don't you understand that? And she's on that other side, so they're really clashing, and I think their
Mhm.
relationship has suffered the most out of everything. The dad, honestly, kind of a bystander.
He tries his best.
Yeah, he tries
Okay.
his best, but it's not good enough.
What is he supposed to do?
Nothing. I don't know, he's just kind of there.
Yeah. Oh
He
my
has he
goodness.
has definitely a very different way, and I guess maybe some people would argue healthier way of dealing with things, but we're never really
Mhm.
seeing how he processes things because these two other people in his family are processing this in a very intense way.
Mhm. And
Um,
I think that was actually deliberate because if you think about the hereditary
yeah,
aspect,
he's not
it's
blood
all on
related.
Annie's side.
Yeah,
And I think if you put them side by side, like he's definitely deals with things differently because he doesn't have like, this
true,
trauma
true,
attached,
true.
at least from like what we've gotten, because we don't get to go really deep into his background.
Yeah, we don't really know much about him other than I think that he is a psychiatrist or in some kind of doctoral position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah,
but yeah, so I guess we can say like, do we want to just talk about the dinner scene? I guess.
sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Cool. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh man, why are all horror movies just centered around dinner scenes? Like we saw this with Texas Chainsaw and we
Mhm.
saw this with Pearl and just like it's very, family structure and um, so Peter is literally just trying to like have a normal conversation and kind of like, you know, move on from everything. But there's a giant elephant in the room, and that is like the fact that Annie can't do that because, and I mean, the whole family can't do that because
Right.
Charlie is not there. So it doesn't feel right. But the other kind of elephant in the room is like all of these really difficult feelings that Annie has to process and that Peter has to process, especially those two, because of what happened at the accident. And I think because Annie found
Yeah.
Charlie in the car too, like that was another element of like I think they both have PTSD from
Oh,
that experience,
definitely.
and
It's shocking to
yeah,
have been a part of it, and it's shocking to have seen the aftermath. And I mean, I can't.
right,
You can't.
right,
And
yeah,
especially because in her head, she's probably like, and she even says like, "You just went to sleep. You just like came home. You went to sleep. How could you
mm-hmm,
do that? But like,
mm-hmm,
how could you not do that?"
right, right. Like what would you do?
Yeah.
What do you do? There's no really like correct way, I guess, to
Yeah.
respond when you're traumatized. So,
Yeah.
um, but where do I start with this dinner scene? Like, she just kind of
Unleashes.
breaks. She breaks, and she, yeah, she completely yells at Peter about like everything, uh, about things being his fault, kind of like she kind of paints it in that way.
Maybe
And
I'll
then he
try
comes
to
back at
insert
her
it
and
in
is
here.
like, well, you told me to bring her, you
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
all this kind of,
Teenagery thing to do.
yeah.
Well, actually, it's your fault.
I mean,
Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Do you understand? All I do is worry and slave and defend you, and all I get back is that fucking face on your face! So full of disdain and resentment and always so annoyed. Well, now your sister is dead! And I know you miss her, and I know it was an accident, and I know you're in pain, and I wish I could take that away for you. I wish I could shield you from the knowledge that you did what you did, but your sister is dead. She is gone forever. And what a waste. If it could have maybe brought us together or something. If you could have just said, I'm sorry, or faced up to what happened. Maybe then we could do something with this. But you can't take responsibility for anything. So now I can't accept. And I can't forgive. Because nobody admits anything they've done.
yeah. So the performance like is just so good. Like
Yeah.
I after that happened and she's like screaming, I felt so scared and uncomfortable because she's at her breaking point and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is she gonna do
Yeah.
next? You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I didn't want to think that way, but like, she's standing up, she's screaming, like, holy crap, this is the climax. Like what's gonna happen? Um, it felt so real and it felt so raw. And like me and my friends when we were watching, we looked at each other, ouch. Like
Yeah.
she didn't have to do that. Like we understand that you're upset, but you
Yeah.
know, I
Very,
don't know.
very hard. And, um, yeah. And that amongst this time, we said that Annie's like kind of playing with the idea of going back to group therapy, but now because it's such a different situation, I think she's much more uncomfortable with doing that because the feelings are very different.
Mm-hmm.
But she's like kind of cornered while she's trying to decide if she wants to go or not by somebody else who is part of the grief group. I don't know whether she actually was or not. I don't remember.
Joni?
Yeah. Joni.
Yeah.
Whichever.
Yeah.
But she's like, I lost my son and my grandson to let's talk sometime. We'll figure it out. I'm so sorry. And I think Annie sees this as like the first person who could maybe understand like the way that she feels, because it wasn't just like somebody dying. It was like this shouldn't have happened and it happened, kind of thing.
Right. So this, like, looking back, like, that moment is so disturbing to me. And like, so the scene that, and I want to talk about the scenes that scare us the most too, but like this kind of leads in to that scene, is the fact that like these cult members or people, just people prey on other people when they're in vulnerable states.
Yeah.
Vulnerable mental states. And like, I feel like if you're going to take somebody's traumatized experience and then either manipulate them or like for your own gain or like, any kind of sacrifice them, just, even in just like a regular sense, like, oh, I'm trying to sell you something, like that is just evil to me. Like that is pure evil.
Yeah. To know, we'll get to this later, but Joan is part of this big cult, which is like the culmination of the movie or whatever. But she is really truly just using, like, she knows exactly what happened to her and she knows exactly how this is going to go, because as we'll talk about later, everything is planned out in some way. And she's just making Annie part of her play, kind of like Annie might do to other people in her little art projects. Yeah. Though it doesn't affect them in that way.
Okay.
But yeah. So, you're going to talk about what happens with that, I guess? Because we're kind of working with two different storylines here. We're working with, like, the familial storyline and then, like, Annie doing her kind of thing storyline.
It's hard.
I know. It's hard to figure out where to go.
So, I guess, like, in my brain, in my little ADHD brain, this is gonna bridge it together, but it might not bridge it together for you.
It's okay.
I don't know for other people, but basically, so we have the film's title, Hereditary, and I feel like they could have really gone in the direction of, like, does evil run in the family, but also speak on mental illness in that way. And I am really, really, really glad that they didn't do that. It was actually really refreshing. And in the beginning half, you're still kind of wondering, you're like, okay, like Annie has this like weird background, had schizophrenia, and other family members have like struggle with mental illness and things like that. So there is definitely those elements. And in the beginning, we're like, okay, is this going to be what it's going to be about?
Right.
But then we as a viewer were like, it feels like there's something more. There's just like a bit to it than just that. And we later figure out that it's actually what's hereditary is like this passing down of payment. So I don't know, I just and like, so mental illness isn't really seen as like the bad what's the bad thing is, you know, like
Yeah.
how some horror movies portray it and like cause a lot of stigma, especially with schizophrenia and bipolar and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and
And I mean,
delusions.
I
And
think they
yeah,
also say that the mother, the one who passed away, the grandmother, she was diagnosed with DID as well.
yes,
As that's what they
yes,
say.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is also
Not
hugely stigmatized.
right.
Um, and so like, I'm really glad the movie didn't say this is what the horror is like
Yeah.
these things. And it's like, no, it's actually it's actually a demon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like an actual demon. But it's still like relatable because, you know, families have, well, some families have trauma that's passed down
Hmm.
generationally.
Yeah.
It does feel kind of like a curse, or like you have to face your demons, but like in a literal way in this movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That
I
definitely makes
liked that.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
good. And then
So
yeah. So I mean, I guess going back to like where the cult is. Hold on. I gotta get myself. I'm so confused. Okay. So I liked that. Thank you. I appreciated that. That was a good look on it because I felt like I was kind of thinking there, but I couldn't exactly put it into a way that made sense for me. So I like having heard that. um
yeah, for some reason that bridged the gap for
no,
me. I
no,
don't know why,
that does I didn't even think about thinking about how like, you know, families all have their demons, but in this movie they actually do have their demons for real.
yes,
Literally. Um
yeah,
But yeah, so we've got Joni, she's preying on this. Annie eventually goes over there after having seen her in passing a few times, and she's still struggling and not really finding a way to forgive Peter or forgive that this happened or move on in
mhm.
any way. So she goes over there, and Joni's like, well, actually, I went to this spiritual, some kind of get together gathering, I don't know,
Seance, I think.
seance, yes,
Of
an
seance,
open
yeah.
seance. And she says that I contacted my grandson and I think I can show you how to contact your daughter, and brings her through this whole ritual. And Annie has no idea what's going on. It scares her and it freaks her out, but she is, you know, holding on to that hope that like, oh, I can talk to my daughter again and maybe get some closure from this incident, since I didn't get that, you know,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
also so evil.
It is like, so that right there is the scariest part for me because, and I, because like I consider myself a witch, right? And the friends that I was watching with, like, I think she considers herself like, you know, in that realm as well. And so we were both like, hell no, you don't just, you know, invite whatever into your home without knowing a thing. And like,
Yeah,
we both were like, this is not gonna end well. She's gonna invite something
yeah,
evil, and like whatever words that she was enchanting. I was like, oh, this is not right. This is
yeah.
wrong.
She gives her a whole book and she's like, you need all of your family there, especially your son. Which I thought was like, that's weird.
Yeah, I was like, what in the world? Like at this moment, I'm still not knowing that, you know, they're trying to
Right,
possess Peter, right?
right.
Get
But
him
having known
in
that, I
the body.
paid special attention to the fact that she was like, he needs to be there.
Yeah, I was like, that's weird that they have to be in the house. But I'm like, for some reason in my brain, I was like, okay, I'll rationalize it with no explanation.
Yeah. And so she does this. I think this is now, yeah.
Mhm,
She does it pretty much immediately after.
mhm,
She goes home and apparently tries it on her own, and then she gets her family to come in, and you know she's got Charlie's sketchbook, and there's all these drawings of Peter with his eyes xed out and crying, and the book is flipping through, and oh my gosh, so much crazy stuff happens. It gets really
Yes.
wild.
Yeah.
um yeah, she's, Annie's contacted her, it seems,
Mhm.
and things start kind of moving around the room. Air's moving through. Annie's talking, but she's talking as Charlie, or with Charlie's voice. And,
Mhm.
like, she's scared. She doesn't know what's going on. Where is everybody? And this is very, very disturbing to Peter and
Mhm.
the dad. Mostly to Peter, though.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't it be?
Yeah. I'm curious about your thoughts of like that in particular, having seen it a second time, where like Charlie is kind of in Annie's body for a moment, because we know that they have to break down people in order to kind of like
Yeah.
possess them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it really felt like instead of Annie talking for Charlie or Charlie talking through Annie, like literally you have Charlie's voice, right?
Right.
And she's scared and she doesn't know what's going on. Like, I don't know how that kind of plays in your opinion, and it's okay if you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but like, are Charlie and Payman two separate entities? Have like when Payman was possessing Charlie was like in a shared body? Like how can we explain that?
So I kind of feel like it was a shared thing
Okay.
almost. So like I wasn't really sure about this, and to me it kind of felt like this was more of like a meta horror element where we just needed like this scary thing to happen because it does kind of feel weird with the
Mhm.
rest of the movie. Like the fact that she's talking through the mom. Um,
Yeah.
I think that Payman is a part of Charlie, but I don't think that Charlie is like Payman only.
Right.
You know, because
Yeah.
if so, we know that. All right, this is gonna be a lot. So this is like kind of take stuff from the end, but we can talk about that in a second. But feel that Annie was talking about how she had this difficult relationship with her mother, and she had no contact with her throughout her pregnancy and like Peter's birth and like early childhood. But then when she had Charlie, she decided to literally said like I let my mom have her,
Mhm.
and we kind of find out that she was even like sometimes breastfeeding Charlie.
What is with the breastfeeding
I
horror?
don't
Just
know. There's a lot of it happening. um, but
why?
from that, you know, we find out later that like Ellen, the grandmother, she is like the leader of this cult, and they call her queen. So I'm assuming that, and with the comments that she was diagnosed with DID, I think that Payman was a part of her and was trying, because she didn't have like the ideal, I don't know, this is just my reading of it,
Mhm.
because she didn't have like the ideal body for Payman, she was working to pass that down. But because Peter was not available for whatever part of the ritual needed to take place when like a kid was born,
Mhm.
um, that Charlie was like what happened. Like
Right.
because she got control of Charlie, she was able to like put that into place, and then everything
Mhm.
followed after that. Because we also know that her son, Annie's brother, had stated that his mom was trying to put people into him. So I think she was
Mhm.
trying to do the same thing. So in some way she has like control of Payman. Now whether that's like part of her, or like she just somehow
Right.
has this connection or contact. I don't know. Because we don't
Right.
know what's happened above her or anything.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I think that that's where that goes. I don't even know where we started. Just because I just needed to say that. Um, but yeah, so like I don't know that Charlie was Payman or just had Payman like with her, with
Mhm.
intentions of the cult always to put it into Peter.
The just one thing that throws me off
Yeah.
is like the end when Peter is
Oh,
taken
and they
over.
say
They say, "Hi,
Charlie.
Charlie," and I'm
True.
like, that's the only thing where I'm like, what? And I was like, I just don't understand. But
Yeah, I didn't think about
I
that.
don't know. I
That's
don't have
interesting.
to.
Yeah,
It's just
true.
like, I don't know why. Okay, just one little like
Yeah.
detail that I'm like, just the pieces aren't piecing, you know?
Yeah. The pieces aren't piecing. So, I don't know if this is before or after because my timelines get kind of jumbled with movies that it's like linear, but we're going from like character to character, location to location. Sometimes it's a little hard for me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Peter at some point is in class and
Oh, I love this scene. It's
yeah.
so good.
Here you tell. You tell, you tell.
Oh no. So like, so there's like this reoccurring light that happens
Yeah.
around Charlie. Like in the beginning, you're like, "What the fuck is this?" And in the beginning, you're like, "I have no idea what this is." And later on, we come to assume that it's like the soul of Damon,
Something like that. Yeah.
something. Um, but yeah, Peter is sitting in class, and he kind of like looks over at this reflection, and the reflection is smiling, and he's not. And that's just horrifying.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then all of a sudden, he gets kind of possessed, and his arms are like going up, and like
No.
his face is like all distorted, and then he just like bashes his face on the desk, and
Yeah.
his nose is bleeding, and then like he stumbles backwards, and I'm like, I just wonder if the actor like actually
Yeah.
accidentally hurt himself, because I'm like, there is no way that you could have done it that good and not accidentally like.
Yeah. It's wild. And like before this I kind of forgot about it, but another scene where he's at school, you can see kind of Joni across the street and she's
Oh yeah.
chanting these phrases and some of the words we've seen um like carved in different places of their house. Um
Mm-hmm.
and she's kind of chanting it at him and he's looking around and nobody else seems to notice that this is happening at all. Like this is
Yeah.
something that specifically he is like very dialed into and is
Yeah.
specific to him because nobody around is like, "Oh, this weird lady is like screaming at us from across the street."
Yeah. and and like, I don't know if it was her and this particular time. I think it happened twice, or maybe it happened to Charlie too. I don't know. There's like a ton of cult members, but at one point, someone is like trying to exorcise uh, Peter out of himself. They're like, "Get out, Peter!" And I'm like, for
Yeah,
some
yeah, I
reason,
think that's what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like, I don't want to say that it's funny, like, because it's disturbing, but it's
Oh, it
also like,
is kind of funny. The way she
it's a
says it
little
is
funny.
funny.
Get out.
But
But
yeah,
yeah.
I do want to say something about that I think is interesting. So a lot of the stuff that I got and like a good purchase point that I found for like working on some of the things that I've been saying, I looked up the screenplay online because I like needed to kind of read dialogue versus hearing it and like organize some stuff just because sometimes it's too much. And I found that the way they described Peter's face being in that scene after he's like injured himself and his face is kind of looking strange is the same way that they describe Charlie's um, dismembered head looking in that one shot that we get of it. So like her nose is like bashed in because of the pole. Her eyes are kind of like shut and bloodshot because of what happened. So I thought that that was really interesting. So in some way he's kind of experiencing like Charlie's last moment like in himself, which I thought was like
Oh,
really awesome.
oh my gosh, that's so cool. I didn't know that, and that's like a huge light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if this is a stretch or whatever, but like, let's say, you know, Payman has possessed him for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the last thing that Payman experienced.
Yeah.
So he's like, I don't know, that's wild.
Yeah, I thought that
I
was
really
very
like
interesting. And if like there are also there's some like deleted scenes online, but the screenplay has all of those deleted scenes just written in them as part of the story so you can see where they go. And I think it's like pretty valuable to like deciphering some of this. Some of it is just kind of like filler, but some of it I think was like really interesting. So like let me see something. One thing that I have, there's a scene where Annie's working on her miniatures, and Steve, the husband, sees one, and it's Peter's body on his bed, but he doesn't have a head, and he just kind of looks at it, and like the scene ends, just like we see it, and it's kind of ominous because we're like, oh shit, another person doesn't have a head. This movie has so much head things. But in the screenplay, that scene is a little bit longer. And Steve says, oh, that's nice. And Annie's like, what are you talking about? And it seems that she didn't even put that there. It seems that she is also shocked by that being there. And Steve says, I was wondering when Peter would get switched with Charlie, which I thought was very interesting.
Wait, Peter said that?
No, Steve says that, the dad, about the miniature where Peter doesn't have a head. And he goes, that's nice. And she's like, what? What are you talking about? And he goes, well, I was wondering when Peter would get switched with Charlie. Which I just thought was like very interesting.
But what does that mean?
I know. Like, I can see why they cut it out, but like, I thought it was interesting that like so like the implication, I think, I mean, it's not part of the movie, so like, you know, this is all speculation because obviously it's not in there on purpose. But I think the implication is either A, that she was not conscious, so she's like sleepwalking or something while she was making this, and that ended up there, or, you know, some other weird thing happened where this is there and it's just more foreshadowing for what's to come. But I thought that was interesting just to read, and also the scene is even longer, and she sees another one of her in an attic miniature where she's in her nightgown and the front of it is covered with blood, and she's like holding her head in her hands, which I thought was interesting. So yeah.
That is interesting.
So yeah, if you ever get like a couple hours and you just want to read the movie with some extra stuff, I think it's pretty interesting to do.
Oh yeah, just some light reading.
Yeah, just some light reading. But yeah.
I like that because I think it ties in like the dollhouse aspect, because a lot of the shots are wide. The house was built literally for the movie to be shot in a certain way, to kind of like, it all looks like a dollhouse. So I enjoyed how like the art imitated life and vice versa.
Yeah.
It definitely plays into that, but like with like that one little scene that was cut out, I feel like kind of plays into it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting that line that he said. Like, I thought was cool.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. But yeah, so after all of that happens, we've got, oh my gosh, so much is happening. I think this is kind of the time when Annie is starting to get a little bit freaked out, and she's kind of trying to bring things back to Earth. Things are getting a little too weird, and she's realizing that she's opened up a door that's causing a lot of harm, and she's scaring herself because she's begun sleepwalking again. She has this sleepwalking dream, like one slash the other, where she's talking to Peter and she says like, I never wanted to be your mother. I tried everything I could to not have you. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like your mother. And he's like, why? Like, what is the problem? And she says, like, I wanted to save you. And he says, like, from what? And she doesn't really know
Yeah.
even. So I thought that that was interesting as well. Everything's so interesting to me. Because I don't know if it means like she wanted to save him from her because she didn't think that she'd be a good mother, or more broadly, somewhere deep down, she knows that something is wrong and she doesn't want him to suffer the fate that is so clearly designed for him.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my mind kind of comes to like, I feel like there's a lot of people that make decisions about like children that they do or don't want to bring into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And also like again, Hereditary, like there's also things that people act like they consider those things, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
in that decision. Uh, Not saying that's wrong or right or whatever.
Right.
But it's just kind of like I didn't really put together until now.
Yeah. Or, you know, kind of thinking like what she experienced throughout her childhood. And she's like, I don't want you to experience
Yeah,
those things. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Or just
Um,
like, yeah. And she specifically wanted to keep away from
the mother. Yeah.
the stuff that was going on. So
Yeah. Yeah. But she's kind of decided like we can't do this. She tries to burn Charlie's sketchbook, which is what she kind of like summoned whatever it is to their home, and she starts kind of catching on fire, and she's like,
yeah,
shit, now we're connected. Um she finds, I don't know when this happens, but she eventually goes up to the attic
yeah,
and she finds her mother's body there
yes,
after like months, presumably.
yeah,
And it doesn't have a head, of course,
yeah.
and the symbol that we've been talking about is there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
her husband kind of doesn't believe her and is like, whatever, I'll go check. And he sees it too, and he's like, what the fuck is happening? Um, and Annie's like, look, I can make this all stop. It's fine. Like, you just throw the book into the fire and it'll kill me and then it's over. And he's like, I'm not gonna do this. I need to figure something out for you. Like, because he clearly does not believe anything that's happening and he thinks that she's just like suffering some kind of break and he wants to help her
Mm-hmm.
through that. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, fuck it. She just throws it into the fire and she's like ready to suffer. And then Steve
Yeah.
catches on fire instead.
No. Oh my gosh, this part was so like no matter who it was gonna be, it was like heart wrenching because
Yeah.
like she prepped it so much. She's like, okay, I love you, blah 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 blah. Like going to sacrifice herself and then bam, like again your expectations are subverted and it's
Yeah.
just kidding, it's this other person, and then she's like, oh my god, so that's another like traumatic event that's happening that's breaking her down even more.
Yeah.
She's just
And I think this is like the kickoff for like everything else that happens.
yeah, yeah. And then slow descent of this moment into like now she can walk on walls and she can fly around.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah. So, pretty shortly after this, I feel like Peter wakes up and you can
Oh,
see yeah, I hate this part, it's so gross. Peter's like waking up. He hears the clicking noise that Charlie makes. We didn't mention that, but
which
if you've
is
seen
such
the
a
movie, you
it's a
know.
great element. Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. Mm-hmm.
He hears this noise and he's looking everywhere around, like, where is this noise coming from? And in the background, you can see Annie, his mom, kind of like on the wall, like just kind of hanging out, staring at him, and he doesn't see this. And then
So
Ugh. I hate even thinking about what it looks like, the next part.
But hold on. So like, so she's like up in the corner, right?
Yeah,
On the
she's
wall.
full
She's
Spider-Man
just,
mode. Yeah.
but it's so creepy because she's not moving. But what was worse was like you're like, because you heard the sound, you're like preparing of like, okay, something's gonna happen, someone is gonna be there, or whatever. But if it wasn't for my friend who was like sitting beside me because I was watching it with friends, so I didn't notice it at first. I
Oh,
just, oh my god, what's that? And I was like, what? And then I noticed it. I was like, no. So that made it even worse than the fact that like it took me a really long time to
to
kind
notice
of
that she was up
notice.
there.
And
Ugh.
yes,
I hate.
that somehow made it worse.
Yeah, and then he kind of looks around and he still doesn't notice, but then she does like a weird, I don't know, she exits the room in a really weird way that I hate to like. The way it looks is just really gross to me. It's very unnatural.
Like exorcist type
Yeah, like
crawling, bones breaking, and yeah.
yeah. Um, and he hears a noise, so he goes downstairs. Piano's knocked over. Um, and we can see he's seeing his dad, you know, who's not on fire anymore, but not alive now.
Crispy. He's
Yeah,
crispy.
Crispy Steve.
Oh no.
Um, and you can see Annie again up on the ceiling, up on the wall, and um, he's kind of hanging out, I guess. How does he, so eventually she ends up chasing him, but I don't like remember what that transition is like.
Yeah, because it all happened so fast.
Yeah.
And like, and I know you've seen it like a second time, but it's still like it's so
So
surreal
quick.
because like I'm like I want to look, I don't want to look.
Yeah.
Like, um, yeah, at some point, like yeah, she just starts
Yes.
chasing him.
Yeah, and he makes his
I don't
way
know.
up to the attic because that's like the safest place, I guess. He pulls the ladder up and she like just starts banging her head on the attic door, which is a very bad visual to see. It's a good visual, but it's bad for me to
Yes,
see with my eyes.
yes, in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. And he's
So
like,
yeah,
"Mommy."
I know.
Oh, so sad.
Oh, I know. Whenever I hear like a grown teenage boy say that,
Yeah.
or like like a grown teenager or adult, it's just like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So like at first we just hear the banging,
Oh,
and then it's
yeah.
like a cut scene. So I think like in terms of audio, amazing. So you have
Yeah.
the reoccurring clicking noise, and then just like you hear things before you see them,
Mm-hmm.
and like you hear the banging, but like your brain doesn't process it. You're like it's Annie, but you don't know it's her head, and it's literally
Yeah.
it's her head, um, which is crazy. Um, yeah. So oh yeah. So like the audio was really good for those scares, which I think makes them a little bit more disturbing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, hearing it before, you're like, oh, she's just like knocking with her hand, but no, no, it's that noggin. Knocking with the noggin.
That's how I'm gonna knock on my friends' doors from now on.
Oh,
There's no other
oof.
way.
Only if they have like a ring camera, because otherwise you're just doing it for yourself. But Peter's now in the attic, and we can see, like, while this is happening, while he's still kind of scared by, the knocking, you can see candles, like, around him. So clearly something's going on up here, because that's
Mhm.
not normal. Um,
Yep.
and I think we see everything before he sees it. We've got these older people mostly, and they're all naked standing around. There's an older man who's naked, kind of creepily in the shadows, staring and smiling, which at the very beginning of the movie at the grandmother's funeral, this same man is smiling in the very same way at Charlie, which is cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cold number then.
Yeah. And he sees this where his grandmother's body was, which he didn't see. He doesn't know that it was there. There's now just a like a triangle and the picture of him with his eyes like taken out and candles around it as if they're doing some kind of ritual on him. And gosh, as he's kind of staring at this again with audio, you hear this sound that's like a sawing kind of,
Yeah.
and yeah, like progressively gets faster and faster.
Yeah, like a saw / squelch.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
a wet saw.
A wet saw.
Yeah. And you know, slowly, like really slowly, we pan up and we see that the sound is Annie with a piano wire just sawing her head off. And and the expression on her face, like I don't really know how to read, but it seems like she's like frightened by this. Like she's not doing it because she wants to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes it more disturbing. Also, it's just so weird because, like, you know, she was outside of the attic. And
yeah, now she's there.
Not only is she in the attic, but she's sawing her head off in the air.
Yeah, she's floating.
She is floating in the air, like, wrapping this thing around her neck, and, like, you're like, what? You're just as disoriented.
Yeah.
As poor Peter.
Poor Peter.
You know,
and, you know, eventually she saws it, topples off. Head gone. Head count 3.
3. They do have a lot of head counts.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. And Peter jumps out the window. Because he's mega scared. And we see that light again, and this time, instead of going towards something, this light goes directly into Peter.
Mm-hmm.
And Annie's headless body floats into Charlie's treehouse, which is like something that they keep returning to throughout the film. Different family members will sleep there or hang out there, and it goes over there. Peter's body seems like it's kind of puppeteered almost up, and he walks up there as well. And we see this whole setup where this cult is bowing down towards, it's like a metal statue with Charlie's head on it, her actual real head, and a crown. And the grandmother and the mother are both kneeling towards the statue without their heads. And when Peter gets up there, they crown him, and they're basically like, "Hi Charlie, you're Payman now, one of the kings of hell. Welcome, we did it."
Yeah. Yay, we won.
Finn.
We did the thing.
Yeah. So
and then it's over.
Yeah.
And you're like, what happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, all of that, you know, that's a lot, and maybe we didn't say it all in the most concise and consecutive way, but hopefully you know what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like now we can kind of, like, dig.
Yes.
All right. So, let's see. I've said some of this already, so I won't say that again. We were just talking about how I thought that you know, Annie didn't let Ellen, the grandmother, near Peter when he was born, so she was unable to get payment into his body. And when she let her around Charlie, we're to believe that Charlie was kind of the new target for somewhere for this demon to go. But because Payman requires a male host, Charlie needed to die so that Payman could move into another, more desirable body. Which, the reason that I thought that maybe Payman was with Ellen at first is because none of this really kicks off until she dies. So I think that in some way Payman might have been trapped with her until her death, which is kind of like how everything else happens after.
Okay.
Whether that's like Payman is Ellen or they're just inhabiting the same body, whatever. Same with Charlie. And then I said Steve's role is a bystander, and because he's kind of trying to put a stop to things that are happening, that's why he has to die.
Okay.
Just because I think that everything in this movie, everything that we witness, has been designed meticulously by this cult to happen in this exact way. How they do that, no idea. But
Yeah.
no matter what, Annie and her family were going to go through something related to Payman. It doesn't matter how it happened, it was going to happen.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Is like everything is curated by the cult. And we find out later, like the accident was really planned. But there's just one like logical loophole for me that confuses me, because I'm like, okay, yes, you can plan the accident and put the deer there and everything, but how do you plan Charlie having an anaphylactic shock and having her directly stick her head out the window?
I have well, not an answer, but something that I thought was interesting. So another deleted scene that's there, or was there, is that when they get to the party, Charlie is very, very hesitant to go inside. And Peter kind of has to convince her, like, you'll have fun, like, you'll hang out. And Charlie's like, I'll just stay out here and I'll wait till you're done and then we can go home. And an article I was reading about that scene specifically kind of theorized, like, what if Charlie, like the person Charlie, not the Payman part of Charlie, like, knew that something was going to happen and was like, I'm not going. And so somehow, some way, this was also designed by them. They knew like every event that was going to lead up so that this would happen perfectly the way that they wanted it to. Which I don't know, but I just think that like having that extra knowledge in there.
I guess cool. Being a god of hell makes you clairvoyant.
I guess so. I guess so. Because when they pass by the telephone pole on their way to the party, that symbol is there. So obviously the telephone pole is going to be involved in some way. Yeah. So wild. It's almost like they're marking it for death, like, because the only time we ever see it is like as a marking for something that is going to happen or has happened.
Right.
Except for like necklaces and stuff like that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Sorry, I'm processing.
Yeah, it's a lot. Also, I thought it was interesting that when after the funeral of the grandmother, after Ellen's funeral, Annie is kind of like looking through her stuff, and she pulls out a book called Spirituality, and there's a note in it that says, let me see, I gotta find it really quick. I have it in my notes somewhere. She says, "Forgive me for all the things I couldn't tell you. Please don't hate me and try not to despair your losses. You will see in the end that they are worth it. Our sacrifices will pale next to the rewards." Which I thought, like, after knowing what's happened, I think that she's saying, forgive me for everything I couldn't tell you, for what's already happened. Don't hate me and don't despair your losses. Her, Charlie, Steve, Peter ultimately, because our sacrifices as a family are going to pale next to the rewards of having Payman out in the world to do whatever their bidding is. I don't know.
He's just mischief.
Yeah, I just like how that note reads very differently with context of what's about to happen versus like not knowing that yet.
That's true.
Which also is what led me to believe that like everything is like they know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like I don't know how they do it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
Like,
would
do
love to.
they do some rituals or like I don't know. I don't know. I
Um,
don't know how they get into the house and get into the attic.
right, yeah, they're all over
There's so
that
many things
house. They've
where I'm
got
just
words
like,
carved everywhere.
yeah, I have no idea, but
Hey.
I'm gonna accept it.
Um, let's see. What else? What else? What else? I think I just have like one more thing. This thing was just like kind of funny-ish to me. It was like kind of like a meta foreshadowing or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so the first time that we're seeing a classroom scene, like Peter's classroom, the class is talking about a book that they're reading, and somebody says the character refuses to look at all the signs that that are handed to him during the entire play. Which, here we go. We're seeing all these signs, like these literal signs, these symbols throughout the whole movie, and first watch, we don't really know what they're for. Second
Yeah.
watch, all these symbols were here, all these signs were here. Maybe if, they had the knowledge that we had, if they knew about the cult, if they knew about that stuff, maybe things wouldn't have happened the way that they did, but you never know.
Mm-hmm.
And they also say that even if it is all inevitable, they are just pawns in this horrible, hopeless machine. Which,
Damn.
yeah, rough. Later on in the classroom, I think this is when all that stuff happens to Peter, where he's like hurting his face and things. The class is again talking, and the board says punishment brings wisdom, which their family's being
Mm-hmm.
punished to get the wisdom of payment. And the class is again speaking, and the teacher or somebody else says a character's name. Their murder was commanded by the gods, so really they had no choice.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
So
I just
tons of
said it
foreshadowing.
always has been and always will be.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And
It's
then,
like destined to happen, I guess.
yeah. So I just thought all
Mhm.
of that was like really interesting, where like on my first watch, all of that like didn't pop out to me and didn't really mean anything to me. I'm just like, oh, they're just like talking about a book in class, whatever. And then the
Mhm.
second watch, like, I just thought that was like so awesome that they
Mhm.
like thought
Yeah,
like that deeply to put that stuff in there.
yeah. I
Um,
I
yeah.
love that little Easter eggs and foreshadowing.
Yes,
It's
which is what
like
I love.
literally all of these were right in front of your face, but you just didn't know. It's just
Exactly.
yeah,
And even to the viewer, like, hello, we're telling you this whole entire time.
yeah, exactly.
um, and then one more thing that's just interesting. When we're looking at there's a part where Annie goes to Joan's house when she's like suspicious of the ritual. And she can't get in, but we kind of get a camera shot of what the inside of Joan's house is like. And we've got
Yes.
candles, we've got a triangle, that picture of Peter's in there, kind of like she has done a ritual on Peter. Or even like, I don't know if this is what it's implying, but like when they were doing their ritual, everything was under a tablecloth, and this is without the tablecloth. So I don't know if the ritual they were doing with Annie there like was over top of this stuff, or if this is just also here.
Um,
You know what I mean?
that's a good point.
And then also on the table is Charlie's little pigeon head figure that she made, her little toy that she made with the
Yes.
pigeon head and that. And then there's also two heads, one of a rat and one of a rabbit, that are sitting in front of it looking at that statue. And then in the back, there's bottle sculptures of the bottles like are like figures, and they're kneeling towards it, which is exactly the setup of the final scene.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And it's like Charlie was like baking these things because she or Payman, both of them were kind of like preparing what was already going to happen. So that makes sense to
Yeah. So like
why
we
she
did,
wouldn't want to go
right at the
to.
beginning of the
Yeah.
movie, we see that Charlie's like making all of these toys, and like it's just like kind of something that she does. And she
Mhm.
um in another like part in the screenplay, she's like in the treehouse, and in one of her boxes she has the head of the squirrel and the head of the rat in the box. So like it seems like she even was like going to make this diorama, but somebody ended
Mhm.
up doing it for her. Like some part of her, even if she didn't know, like knew that this is what was going to be.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And
Hmm.
I don't know if this connects in any way, um, but I remember like in the scene where the pigeon like hits the
Oh, the classroom
window.
window. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think that Charlie was surprised. Like Charlie didn't even look.
No, and also that's like one of the instances that that light kind of the light moves over towards there and then the pigeon hits, kind of like she was like, okay.
Yeah, it feels like she already knew that that was gonna happen, or like I don't know, she just wasn't surprised at all and didn't have a reaction.
And marched right out there to take its little head too.
Yeah, yep. It's like I know what I have to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's all I have, but I felt really good picking it apart. Every time I thought about something else, I was like, "Ooh, gotta type it out, gotta type it out." And I felt good too, because the only thing I really looked up was like that one deleted scene thing, and the rest of it, I was like, I felt good.
yeah, good, good. It's there's so much to pick apart.
Yeah, it's a very like kind of like a puzzle of a movie. So if you've only seen it once and you want to watch it again, um, for you, Ruby, and anybody
Mhm.
else, like it is really fun to do if you want to
Yeah,
like look for things that you didn't see before.
I would definitely love to do that. I love
Yeah.
when movies do that. It's
Yes. Yes, I love it too.
Mhm.
I like the little secrets.
Yes, little
Hmm.
Easter eggs,
Hmm.
little snails if you're in Adventure Time.
But yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
How did you feel about it then? Rating wise.
Rating. Okay, I'm gonna give it like 8.5, 9
Yeah,
out of 10.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think if I
Um,
hadn't rewatched it, I would have given it a lower score just
mhm,
because I don't remember feeling like extremely jazzed about it the first time I saw it, but after seeing it
mhm,
the second time, I'm there.
yeah. Like I really like it and I appreciate it for being a super original movie.
Yeah.
I feel like a movie that's a 10 out of 10 for me is like one that I really one resonate with. I'm like, I love it. Like when I get out of the theater, like I absolutely love it, no question about it. And it doesn't even have to be a good movie.
Yeah, no.
So my ratings are a little weird. Like they're not going to be the same as a professional critic, like
No.
Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. Because like I really like some cheesy horror
Some
and like
schlock.
yeah, yeah, some stuff that maybe other people like, oh, that's garbage. But I don't know. I don't know. All in all, like the movie itself, like I can't give it a lower score because it is just a good movie in general. Like the writing, the acting, the cinematography, all of it is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
It's so good.
very good. I fully agree. I enjoyed everything about it. The cinematography is great. And I don't know, just being able to pick it apart and like see it for all that it is, or at least all that I could find in it. I'm sure there's more that I didn't even like think about. It was just like so satisfying to me. That's what I love to do, and the fact that like so much was there to look at and like find out and make things make sense. I liked. There was so much
Mhm.
intention behind what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And also,
Okay.
if you are interested in the screenplay, it's super easy to find, but I'll put the link in the description of
Yay.
whatever, if you're listening to it, if you're watching, whatever.
I'm so glad you brought that because I would have never looked for or even
Yeah.
known.
And I got there by accident. I didn't want to have to like rewatch a scene. I just wanted to read it. And there was like a bunch of stuff that I didn't remember watching. And I was like, oh shit, this is like before they made the movie.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love like there's so many decisions that directors and writers and everyone makes
Mm-hmm.
when they like do a movie. That it's just so interesting to see like what it was supposed to be or where it came from and like what actually ended up happening.
Yeah. And I think it gives a lot of context too for like some of the things that are more puzzling. You can see where like the writer was coming from with those ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Like where they stemmed from, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry I kind of took over there in the last half, but I was just so
No.
excited.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad because like I more so related and knew about like I liked the trauma aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And one like last little tip I'll say is like me and my friend after work we were done watching this movie, we're like, are we really messed up because we don't think it was like that disturbing because you know, we've been so traumatized that like it was like relatable. I don't
I love the peace signs. You're like, yeah.
but no, I really love like themes of trauma in movies and books and horror. And like I feel like this movie does it in the best way I've ever seen.
Does it justice?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the best. And I can't ignore that. Focus more like that, like the payment aspect, and like I liked the cult aspect too. But yeah, so I appreciate that you
Yeah.
went so into.
I like how we work together.
Yeah, it's great.
Very good. I approach everything in my life like it's a little puzzle because that's how my silly little brain works.
You're Nancy Drew.
Oh yeah, I'm
too.
a Nancy Drew queen. But yeah,
I'm like
so
sidekick.
yes, not sidekick, co-detective.
I'm like the Sherlock Holmes of like chaotic energy.
There you go.
Yeah, you're Nancy Drew who makes sense and like solves a
Kind of.
mystery. And I'm like, there's this possibility that this thing could happen.
I have a hunch.
And yeah. That's who we are.
Yeah. But yeah, that was really fun and that was Hereditary.
Yeah. So stay spooky,
Stay
folks.
spooky.
And Desi, if you want to give them the spiel of where they can find us and all of that.
So if you want to listen to the audio version, if you're not already doing that, you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or you can listen to it on our Acast website, which I think is in the description. It's our distributor. If you want to see the video version, you can look us up as Pinup Pumpkins Horror Podcast on YouTube. We're on there. Super fun. You can see our lovely faces talk about this.
We're also on Discord if you're not here with us already on
exactly.
Discord.
We're also on Discord where we do this live whenever we do them, which hopefully will be more regular soon once life slows down a little bit. And if you're here, you can join in and ask questions, participate, and then we do little prizes sometimes too. Yeah. So with that, I hope we'll see you next time. Did we decide what we're doing next?
I think we're gonna do the Hellraiser.
Yes.
Hellraiser, the new Hellraiser.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think we're gonna do It Follows and Teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much exciting stuff to come.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Hope you guys are too.
Yeah. So thanks for listening or thanks for watching, and we'll see/speak to you next time.
Alrighty. Bye.
Bye.